On October 27, 2019, Delta operators closed in on the most wanted man in the Middle East. The US needed to take the head off the snake to save potentially thousands of other Kayla Muellers. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The 8 helicopters had to traverse battle lines held by the Syrians, Russians, Turks, and multiple extremist groups. If they survived the journey, they would be faced with a compound rigged with traps in case of attack. This is how the US got justice for Kayla and saved potentially thousands more. Born Ibrahim al-Badri in 1971 in the central Iraqi city of Samarra, the man who would become Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was known in his youth as the Believer due to his intense religious convictions. He devoted his life to Islamic studies and obtained advanced degrees in Islamic theology, including a PhD from the Islamic University of Baghdad. But this education only masked his quiet embrace of a radical Salafist ideology. Following the 2003 US invasion of Iraq, Baghdadi joined the insurgency. He was detained by American forces at Camp Bucca in 2004, which many analysts consider a pivotal moment that radicalized him further due to the abuses he suffered there. Upon his release, he rose through the ranks of a new insurgent group. By 2010, he had become the group's leader, and in 2014, he announced the creation of a caliphate on the balcony of the Al-Nouri Mosque in Mosul. Under Baghdadi's leadership, the group operated the world's largest open-air prison, roughly the size of the United Kingdom, with about 8 million people under its heel. Thanks to its prolific online presence, the group's lust for extreme brutality became their calling card. The group amassed billions in revenue through oil sales, smuggling, extortion, and kidnapping, along with recruiting hundreds of thousands of militants to their cause. But their luck would eventually run out. By 2019, after years of international military efforts, the organization was a shell of its former self. After the fall of its so-called capital in Raqqa, Baghdadi went into hiding to take command of the thousands of fighters that remained in cells across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Baghdadi, with a $25 million bounty on his head, became increasingly difficult to track as he rarely used electronic communications and moved frequently among safe houses. Intelligence agencies believed he was somewhere in the Syria-Turkey border region, but his precise location remained elusive, until a breakthrough came in mid-2019. Although accounts vary, we know the breakthrough came when some people in his inner circle were captured. According to Kurdish officials, they had apprehended one of Baghdadi's wives and a courier when they were attempting to cross the border into Iraq. The Iraqis also claimed they had developed intelligence sources from people they captured close to Baghdadi. For its part, the US took responsibility for cracking the case by stating their satellites had confirmed Baghdadi's presence in this area of northwest Syria, where he was known to frequent. Regardless of whose intelligence led to his ultimate capture, it became clear that Baghdadi was holed up here in a compound about 3 miles south of the Turkish border in Syria's Idlib province, just outside the village of Barisha. This location was surprising to many intelligence analysts because Idlib was dominated by rival extremist groups that were actively hunting Baghdadi themselves. However, US analysts believed he wanted to hide there to take advantage of the chaos in the region that saw Syrian government troops, Al-Qaeda affiliates, Turkish ground troops, and Syrian Kurds, all in a non-stop free-for-all. They also surmised Baghdadi was trying to siphon off some of these fighters to raise a new army. Regardless of why he was there, credible intelligence indicated Baghdadi had been at this compound for a considerable period, and now was the time to strike. On October 24, 2019, the military briefed President Trump that it was now or never to locate and detain Baghdadi before he moved again. The raid would be dangerous. American forces would have to fly across territory controlled by various hostile forces, including Russian and Syrian government troops, as well as various militant groups. Moreover, the raid would take place just miles from the Turkish border at a time when Turkish forces were actively engaged in operations against Kurdish fighters in northern Syria. General Kenneth McKenzie, head of U.S. Central Command, made the final decision to proceed with the operation on October 26. To ensure none of the warring parties shot down their aircraft, the U.S. notified Russia, Syria, and Turkey directly of their intentions to launch the raid. However, they did not say specifics of who the target was, lest Baghdadi get tipped off. With this delicate balancing act of political 4D chess now complete, it was time to execute the raid. The story of how this mission unfolded is truly fascinating. However, many of the graphic details are highly disturbing and not YouTube-friendly. To watch the full-length video completely uncensored, it's available on our Patreon page, where there are no restrictions on what we can tell and show you there. On October 26, 2019, roughly 100 Delta Force operators and Army Rangers gathered around a hangar at Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq. As the special operators gathered around to discuss the operation's specifics, one of the things that came up was what to call it. Back in 2013, Baghdadi's henchmen had kidnapped Kayla Mueller from Aleppo, where she had been volunteering as an aid worker. Because of this, the operation was codenamed Operation Kayla Mueller in her honor. Additionally, they named the unit assembled for this mission Task Force 814 in reference to her birthday. As the men of Task Force 814 gathered around, they knew the mission would not be easy. After taking off from Al-Assad Air Base, the 8 Blackhawks and Chinooks would have to travel across almost the entirety of war-torn Syria. Along the way, they would cross through territory controlled by at least 3 different governments and multiple rebel factions. Any one of these warring parties could get trigger-happy and shoot the helicopters out of the sky, thinking they were the enemy. After waiting around what seemed like forever for diplomatic clearance from all the warring parties, Task Force 814 got the word that evening and departed Al-Assad Air Base at 9 o'clock that night. As darkness fell on October 26, 2019, the 8 helicopters carrying Task Force 814 took off from Al-Assad Air Base. The flight would take approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes through territory that hosted surface-to-air missiles, man-portable missiles, and anti-aircraft guns, all wielded by people with itchy trigger fingers. To avoid being spotted, the formation flew very low and fast through the desert as Task Force 814 tried to head off Baghdadi before he could escape. Then, their worst fears materialized. Just a few miles away from the target area, several anti-air gun crews with truck-mounted ZSU machine guns began firing at the formation. Realizing how bad the situation was, they broke radio silence, and several circling attack helicopters peeled off, as seen here, and began attacking the militants. As the helicopters did their work on the gun crews, the lead gunship spotted a van heading straight toward them. Did they have an RPG? A machine gun? They weren't sure, and after firing a burst of warning shots, the van sped up and headed straight toward the compound. One of the attack helicopters peeled off and knocked out the van with a burst of cannon fire. As this was going on, as seen in this video feed from a circling drone, the helicopters dropped off the assault element. This element was made up of Delta Force operators and would be the ones to actually go in and stop Baghdadi. The other troops seen in this video are the Rangers. Their mission was to make a perimeter around the compound to prevent enemy reinforcements from coming in. They would also search and detain suspects since Baghdadi was known to have at least 2 of his wives and around a dozen children living in the compound with him. Because American intelligence indicated the militants had rigged the main gate of the compound with traps, the Delta operators breached the walls. With concrete dust and smoke still hanging in the air, the Americans began demanding everyone to come out with their hands up in Arabic. In response to these announcements, 11 children and 2 fighters heeded the warnings. As they came through the holes in the wall, some crying and dazed from the blast, Army Rangers began searching and cuffing everyone. They couldn't be too sure. After a few more minutes of waiting, the assault element pushed through the holes in the walls when no one else walked through. That is when they came face to face with the enemy. A group of 4 women began walking intently towards them. Though they had on burqas, the operators could clearly see the outline of explosive vests underneath their clothes. To prevent them from blowing themselves up, the Delta operators ended the threat. However, one woman's vest triggered a small blast that caused minor injuries to 2 operators. As the Delta operators began pushing past the now neutralized bombers, 2 fighters hidden inside a room opened fire with their AK-47s. Thankfully, their knowledge of the Quran is much better than their aim, and they don't hit any of the operators who are protected by the night. With their night vision goggles, the Delta operators make quick work of the 2 and neutralize them within a matter of seconds. With no movement detected from inside the compound, the operators made entry and began methodically searching each room in the 1-story compound. As they comb the hideout, children's toys are interspersed between bomb-making materials and weapons. Despite the initial resistance, they find no one else inside. That is, until they hear a trap door slam. Intelligence had indicated that Baghdadi had constructed an underground tunnel beneath the compound to escape in case of attack. The operators saw the trap door flung wide open and knew they had to follow him. But there was just one problem. Because of the high likelihood of booby traps, the team sent their military working dog Conan in first. With his powerful sense of smell, he could detect danger and attack any person who may be hiding in the shadows. As Conan made his way down the tight corridors, he quickly picked up the scent of his prey. With several operators right behind him, the team could hear a man's frantic footsteps as his sandals flopped down the corridor. That is, until Conan caught up to him. Fearing Baghdadi could get away, The operators ordered Conan to attack. In the darkness, the operators could hear Baghdadi as Conan engaged the target, and he let out a yell. As the two men closed with him, ready to get justice for Kayla, he did the unthinkable. As the operators screamed at him to surrender, they saw his right hand reach into his pocket and pull out a triggering device. Before they had a chance to react, it was all over. In the aftermath of the explosion, the tunnel partially collapsed on them, resulting in the deaths of Baghdadi and two others. But they were not the only casualties. The explosion ripped live electrical wires out of the ceiling and left them exposed in the shaft. These live wires briefly stunned Conan. The two men quickly kicked the wires off Conan, and the dog got up, dazed but alive. Now the operators had the grim task of verifying this was truly Baghdadi. As the two men collected DNA samples from the corpse, the rest of the team began searching the site for any useful intelligence. During the course of the search, the team found multiple computers, cell phones, and filing cabinets that all contained a treasure trove of information on current militant activities. While this intelligence find was great, the team was still left wondering if they had gotten Baghdadi. Thankfully, devices like this have their answer in about 15 minutes. This device is called the ANDE6C system. It was made to take rapid DNA samples in the field with a 99% scientific certainty. This was crucial, considering the team had hours and not weeks to wait on a DNA match. While his time in Camp Bucca had served to radicalize him, it provided the military with a sample of his DNA. With that in hand, the team was able to confirm with 100% certainty this was their man. With the results confirmed, the team retrieved what was left of the target and exfiltrated along with the Rangers and their 11 prisoners. To prevent the place of Baghdadi's death from becoming a shrine, circling aircraft, as seen in this video, pummeled it with bombs until it was nothing but a parking lot. As the team made their way back to base, U.S. Central Command told President Trump and his generals in the Situation Room that they got him with a 100% certainty. The following day, Trump announced to the world that he was dead. Later the next day, U.S. forces gave Baghdadi Islamic funeral rites at sea and was laid to rest at sea in accordance with Islamic protocol. But despite his death, this would not be the end of his empire. U.S. intelligence reports indicated that though Baghdadi's death was a great symbolic victory, it had little operational effect on a group that had become so decentralized at this point. However, that just meant that Delta Force and other special operators could continue tracking down high-value targets anytime, anywhere they found them. Make sure to check out the full version on Patreon. Bye for now.